In one of the most popular dating shows on Chinese television, we witness something that goes beyond entertainment, the perfect anatomy of how to completely destroy someone's self-esteem and then try to glue the pieces back together when it suits you. The story you're about to hear isn't fiction. It really happened. It aired on national Chinese television, and the entire studio fell silent. It's about a humble young man who spent 4 years of his life as a ghost in someone else's story, invisible when not needed, indispensable when she wanted something. They met in Tianjin, one of China's largest cities. He was a simple guy working in a local restaurant, earning just enough to get by. She was a college student on summer break, selling bottled water on the sidewalk to make extra money, or maybe out of boredom, who knows. It was one of those coincidences that feels like a rom-com script, but in real life, they often end very differently. He approached her, bought a bottle of water, probably the most expensive bottle he'd ever purchased, considering what would come next, and when he saw her face drenched in sweat under the scorching summer sun, he offered a simple tissue packet. A small gesture, kind, human. To him, it was as if the world stopped at that moment. He thought she was kind, pure, different from all the rest. It was love at first sight, the kind that blinds you and makes you forget that love is supposed to work both ways. To her, just some nice guy who handed her a tissue, nothing more. From that day on, he made her the gravitational center of his existence. When she started university, he showed up at her dorm with a box full of items, towels, a soap dish, a thermos, clippers, hygiene products, snacks, all bought with his modest earnings. Each item chosen with the care of someone preparing a bridal trousseau. She was moved, or at least, that's what she said. She thanked him, smiled, accepted everything, and he interpreted that gratitude as romantic interest. But that was just the appetizer in a banquet of illusions to come. During her first year at university, she had an important exam. He, barely a high school graduate working 12-hour days at the restaurant, went around asking acquaintances, classmates, anyone what books and materials she'd need. He spent almost 3 months' wages, 3 months of overtime, scrimping every cent, eating less, living less, all to buy a pile of books she never asked for. When he presented the mountain of study materials, proud as a parent giving a diploma, she said something that should have raised a giant red flag. "You didn't have to do all this. You shouldn't spend so much money on me." But he heard, "How sweet, he cares about me." The difference between what she said and what he heard defined the next 4 years of his life. Throughout her college years, he became something between an unpaid butler and a free personal assistant. He carried boxes under the blazing sun, swatting mosquitoes, enduring humiliation, absorbing pitying looks from other students who clearly saw what was happening. There was one day that left a permanent mark on him. It was summer heat at 40 degrees Celsius. She needed to move dorms and called him. He skipped work, losing a day's wage he couldn't really afford, and spent the entire day hauling furniture, boxes, clothes, all alone. Up and down stairs, sweating, panting, but happy to help the woman of his life. At the end of the day, exhausted and with aching back, he expected at least a thank you, maybe a simple dinner invitation, nothing romantic, just basic recognition. Instead, she went out to eat with her classmates and left him there, alone, packing the final boxes. No thank you, no goodbye. As if he were just part of the furniture he helped move. At that moment, part of him understood even if the rest refused to accept that in her life, he was only an accessory, an invisible helper who popped up when useful and disappeared when inconvenient. But things got even worse. Over all those years, whenever he tried to take the relationship to another level, she had excuses. "I can't date because of my family. I want to focus on college. It's not the right time," all delivered in that gentle tone that kept his hope alive. "Maybe in the future," she would say, "when I graduate, when things calm down." He believed her, he waited. He kept investing in a future that existed only in his head. Until he discovered the truth in the worst possible way. One day, on campus, he saw her walking hand in hand with another guy, kissing another guy. Being everything with someone else that she was never with him. When he confronted her, he found out that wasn't the first. Throughout college, she had multiple official boyfriends, publicly acknowledged. And the worst was yet to come. One of her boyfriends, tired of seeing the secret admirer always around, confronted him on the street. It wasn't a civil conversation, it was physical assault, punches, shoves, public humiliation. "Don't come near her again," he yelled, as the guy lay bleeding and confused about what he'd done to deserve it. When he went to her seeking an explanation, hoping at least she'd defend his honor, she said something that shattered his dignity. "He's kind of a stalker. I told people I had a boyfriend to keep him away. I used his name as an excuse. He wasn't even a friend. He was a fictional character in her story to avoid inconvenience." A few months later, the final blow, she complained her phone was old and embarrassing among her peers. All her friends had iPhones. He, earning just over 2,000 yuan a month, saved every penny for 3 months. He ate instant noodles, skipped outings, worked overtime whenever possible, all to buy her an iPhone. When he gave her the gift with that shining expectation in his eyes, like a kid handing a drawing to his mom, she was surprised. She then saved his number as Zai. In Chinese, Zai means gift, offering. He was moved and took it as a sign he'd finally found a special place in her heart. But over time he realized what Zai truly meant. "You're just an object that shows up when I need something and disappears when I don't." A disposable gift. After 4 years of this pathetic dance, he finally mustered the courage to do what he should have on day one: confess love. He planned everything: flowers, a cheap bottle of wine, a little reservation, all with his limited money. Nervous but determined to finally know where he stood. She listened patiently. His declaration, his dreams. And when he finished, she said coldly, as if dismissing a pushy salesperson, "Don't say things like this. We will never have a future, and if you push it, we can't even be friends." Just like that, 4 years of devotion, emotional and financial investment boiled down to 2 sharp sentences. He couldn't accept it. He called, texted, tried to see her again, each attempt more desperate. He went to the university seeking answers, hoping for a second chance, anything to make that time feel worthwhile. When he arrived, she was with friends. And she delivered the final humiliation, introduced him as "my cousin. He comes around now and then to drop stuff off," she casually said, like he was the pizza delivery guy. In front of dozens of people, he finally understood his role in her life: an inconvenient relative, someone who popped by occasionally with no explanation needed. Years passed. He was wounded but not defeated. He rebuilt his life, moved cities, invested in himself, worked with a drive that impressed even his peers. It was as if all that pain turned into fuel for success. He began selling products online, little items, inexpensive goods imported from Korea. He spent nights studying e-commerce, learning digital marketing, finding overlooked market niches. The business grew slowly, then steadily. He reinvested every cent, expanded his catalog, improved service. He wasn't rich overnight, but he gained real financial stability. He bought a small apartment, a used car, and started building a more active social life. Then something unexpected happened. During the pandemic, when everyone was stuck at home shopping online, his business exploded. He seized the moment, scaled up, hired staff, opened a physical store. Suddenly, he found himself in a financial position he could never have imagined, not wealthy, but comfortably well off. He had achieved true independence at an age when many still struggle. A local business magazine ran a feature on young entrepreneurs thriving amid the crisis. He was on the cover, smiling, holding a sign with his company name. The feature drew more attention than expected. He got invited onto television segments, gave entrepreneurship presentations at universities, spoke at digital business events. He became a small regional celebrity. That's when life's irony struck a second time. A few days later, he received a call he didn't expect. It was from the same dating show, the most popular on Chinese television. A producer, excited, said they'd received a special inquiry. A young woman reached out saying she lost contact with an old love. "She saw your magazine photo and recognized you. She says you met years ago and had a beautiful story but lost touch due to misunderstandings. She wants to meet you again." He didn't need to ask who she was. He knew exactly. After years of silence, she'd reappeared. And not by coincidence, just after his photo hit a magazine, just after his newfound success. The timing was offensively obvious. but he was curious not for romance, but to witness her audacity. He accepted. When she stepped on stage, she was different, better dressed, more confident, sophisticated. She had graduated, landed a job at a multinational, built a solid career. But there was something in her eyes, a sense of urgency that hadn't been there before. "I'm sorry," she said tearfully. "After graduation, I met many people, dated others, but no one ever treated me like you did. No one loved me so unconditionally." Her voice wavered. "I was young and immature. I didn't know what I had. I thought there was someone better, more fitting for my social status. But I was completely wrong." The audience was moved, some with tears. The hosts offered the usual sympathetic awe reactions. "I spent years looking for you," she lied outright. "I asked around, tried to find you through mutual friends. When I saw you in the magazine, my heart nearly stopped. You achieved everything you dreamed of, and I felt so proud." But he wasn't 22 anymore. Life had taught him a few truths about people and their motives. "You talk about regret," he said calmly, surprising even himself. "But I wonder, are you sorry for how you treated me, or are you sorry for missing someone who now has something to offer?" The studio fell silent. The cameras captured every reaction. "Because, see," he continued, "when all I had was love to give, it wasn't enough. When I carried your boxes under the heat, spent months' wages on unrequested gifts, skipped work to help you, none of that counted as a real relationship." He raised his hand to hush her attempts to speak. "Now that I'm in the magazine, have a car and an apartment, suddenly you discover that no one's loved me so unconditionally before." The camera captured her color draining. "I learned something important in these years. Love isn't begged. Caring without reciprocation isn't love, it's servitude. And you don't give your whole heart to someone who treats you like a backup." He stood up, looked at the camera, and said, "You say you searched for me for years, but I moved cities. I wasn't hard to find. The truth is, you only came looking when you saw I'd become worthy of your time. Back when I was just that restaurant kid, I didn't even deserve an honest reply." The audience remained utterly silent. The atmosphere was heavy with discomfort. Eventually, one of the hosts, trying to salvage the show, spoke. "Everyone deserves a second chance, but when you ask for forgiveness after so much time, you're actually asking someone to forget the pain, the humiliation, the emptiness they felt, to pretend nothing happened, to trust the same person who made you invisible." She paused dramatically. "And the question remains, are some wounds too deep to heal? Are some mistakes unforgivable not for their cruelty but for the coldness with which they were made? This is not just a story of romantic disillusionment. It's the perfect portrait of a generation that learned to value only after losing, to treat feelings like convenience and replace devotion with status. It's about people who treat love like a financial investment, worth it only once a return is guaranteed. It's about cruelty masked as innocence, about how we can destroy someone entirely just by being indifferent. She wasn't a villain in a soap opera. She wasn't cruel out of malice. She was worse. She was indifferent. She treated his love as worthless because he wasn't socially valuable in her eyes. And when she realized she'd lost someone, rare someone who truly loved without motive, it was too late. Not because he couldn't forgive, but because he was no longer the same person who stood in that Tianjin sidewalk. Time had taught him that some things mean more than unrequited love. Self-respect, dignity, and knowing when someone truly values you. The show ended without reconciliation. No happy ending. No background music swelling. He left the studio alone but whole. She remained on stage, realizing some chances never come back. That true love, when mistreated, doesn't knock twice. Maybe that's the most important lesson. It's not about whether someone deserves a second chance. It's about recognizing that some people are already chapters in our life. Trying to rewrite them wastes time that could be spent writing new chapters with those who value us from page one. Because at the end of the day, true love means being seen when you have nothing else to offer but yourself. Someone who values your presence, not your presence. Someone who loves you for who you are, not what you have. And as extreme as this story sounds, it happens far more often than you might think, both in China and elsewhere. Men like this young man are, unfortunately, the majority. Step men. Men always there to help, to love, but only remembered when convenient. The difference is that he woke up, he suffered, was used, was ignored, but he chose to grow, to evolve, to break the cycle. Most never escape. They keep spinning in that illusion, waiting to be chosen when in fact, they're just emotional placeholders. Shadows. Zai. What's worse is these women don't say they want nothing. On the contrary, they feed hope, accept gifts, give compliments, call you special until the so-called main candidate appears, then vanish. They return only at their convenience. And honestly, this type of woman is worse than sex workers. At least those are clear about what they're offering. No illusions, a direct exchange. But these others, they sell a fantasy with no ownership. They're cold, calculating, and still pose as innocents. The only way out for anyone going through this is what the young man did. Stop living for someone else. Evolve, grow, build a life where you are the center because no one else can hold that seat. Not a girlfriend, a friend, or even family. You come first, always. It may sound arrogant, but the sooner you realize it, the better your life will be. Because these women, who manipulate and use others, they've already learned how the game is played. They've already woken up. They only think of themselves, and they aren't wrong for doing so. The mistake is ours, when we put others on pedestals and let ourselves be emotional springboards. So here's the question that remains. How many more men will need to be trodden on before they understand that being too nice is the quickest way to become invisible? Now I want to know what you think. What do you make of this stepmen dilemma, those only remembered when convenient? If this story touched you in any way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.